Oops. Back over here. There we go. All right. Hi everybody, welcome to the WMGSO Twitch stream. I'm your host, Sham Watermelon Farm, and today I am so happy to welcome the producer and writer of Ghosts of Miami, Joe. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
And the producer and composer, just composer, Casey. Welcome,
Music
Casey.
producer. Hi. Nice. Happy to be here.
There, and we also have the lead developer, Conrad, who is hiding in the corner. Hi. And welcome, you guys. So this is our first visual novel on the stream, so we're really excited to have a chance to branch out a little bit, talk about different kinds of games. Can we get started? Tell us a little bit about yourselves, about the work that you do for Pillow Fight, about your background in games. Go for it.
So I run Pillow Fight. We founded it last year to make beautiful, professional-looking visual novels. So we're happy to show you an example of our original title, Ghosts of Miami today. If you're not familiar with a visual novel, it's a genre that originated in Japan. They're games that are focused on reading and decision-making and getting to know the characters and a world on like kind of a more literary level than most video games. It's a lot like a choose-your-own-adventure book, but there's art and music that goes with the words, and you don't have to hold your place between the pages when you make your decisions. We have save files for that, and Ghosts of Miami, in this case, well, we normally publish and develop visual novels for others, but in this case, we decided to make a game in-house. So we hired a bunch of our artist friends, like Cassandra Friere and Yasmin Omarata, to do background art and sprite art for us, and our very good friend Kimberly Nguyen to do the beautiful like neon UI. And we're going to talk about kind of the neon 80s inspired visuals of Ghosts of Miami, that like cool logo that you're seeing in the middle of the screen now, which looks just like a Janet Devenovich novel, which we did on purpose. And like all of the kind of 80s elements, particularly how the music kind of feeds into the 80s vibe that we were specifically going for. And we're going to be playing a couple games to compare in terms of like both musically and gameplay wise, kind of what we're going for in terms of what we're trying to say with this game.
Yeah, the other games we have coming up after this demo are Defragmented, which is another visual novel with some shooter elements, followed by Hotline Miami, which was an inspiration, I know, for this game for Joe and Conrad, but it is also a really great example of this whole style, this kind of what we're broadly calling 80s revival, in both terms of gameplay and in terms of style and music. So, Casey, while we're here listening to this amazing opening theme, can I just say, I'm having a really hard time not being like...
I appreciate that.
It's so catchy and fantastic.
That's the idea.
Can you tell us a little bit about your approach to the soundtrack of this game?
Yeah, well, a little bit and a lot, hopefully. So this, what you're hearing now, the intro theme, is actually the first thing that I wrote for Ghosts of Miami. And Joe, is it possible to actually see what this goes with?
The opening video, we're gonna wait until a little bit before launch.
Okay.
Our planned launch date for this game is mid-August, but we are Steam greenlit, so you can go onto ghostsofmiami.com and you can find links to our Steam greenlight page where we will eventually be launching the game. And yeah, I got that greenlight in right under the wire.
Yeah.
And also, you can play this same demo and make some different decisions.
Mm-hmm. And I think on the greenlight page you can see a little bit, maybe possibly, of what this music goes along to, but basically there's an intro animation that I think we're all extremely happy with. Lindsay and Alex Patera did that, and looks amazing. So for this track, the request was to create music to go with this animation, but the animators wanted to basically storyboard the animation to fit with the music. So we kind of had a little bit of a chicken and egg problem, where I knew kind of what we were going for. We wanted to broadly introduce all of the characters, set a couple of moods for the game. We wanted to get that fun, hot summer Miami 80s vibe, but also get a little bit of danger. There's a little bit of fun and excitement because this is a visual novel. There's some romance. So we had to touch on a lot of moods, but we were also driven a little bit by budget. We knew we had 90 seconds of animation. So I had to write 90 seconds of music. And that meant I've got, I wanted to do four bar phrases at 122 beats per minute because that's the Miami Vice opening tempo. So I just straight lift that. And it's like, all right, I've got 11 4-bar segments to fill, and then just through that top-down approach, it's like I'm going to break it down A, B, A, C, A, B, A, C, A, with a little intro and outro, and it's like, the A is going to be the main theme, the B's we're going to have like a happy, uplifting, beachy thing, and the C we're going to have like a dark and dangerous. And from there, it was kind of like filling in the blanks and building the transitions. Like, since we knew we needed to hit a 90-second length, we needed to hit all these moods, we needed to give good context for all the characters that were going to appear in the game. It's a lot to do in 90 seconds. I had to do like a top-down approach, which is not usually how I write, but
so you don't usually look to the structure of an existing piece to sort of guide what you're doing. And
right.
That's kind of what happened with, you mentioned the Miami Vice theme being the specific ABC structure, and then going from there.
Yeah, pretty much. It was, I really wanted to make sure that I hit something with enough structure and variety that the animators could work with, and I think we're all very happy with the result. We're excited for you guys to see it soon. But yeah, typically what I tend to do, and what you're hearing with this track, which we call Morning Scramble, is like I tend to do more through compose stuff. So I will basically write from left to right, from beginning to end, and let things go, and sort of build things up in layers that way. So that's much more of a bottom-up approach. I'm noodling around on the keyboard. Is there something that I like? Okay, I'm going to lock that in place, and can I build on that? Do I build on that going horizontally, or do I see what other instruments interact well with it?
Okay.
So I know you usually have arrangers on your stream rather than composers,
right.
But I figured we'd sit around here and talk a little bit about how we went about like hiring Casey, and also like what I did to put together the kinds of songs that we would need. So visual novels are a little bit different. So on the stream previously, I know you've talked a lot about like how the sound design of the game, like jumping sounds, hitting enemy sounds, death sounds, kind of tie in and become a part of the soundtrack that you as the player engage in. In this case, visual novels don't have action beats or that many sound cues. When we sound engineer this game, it's definitely going to involve some door opening and closing sound effects. This is a demo, so it's not complete. We're going to have a couple more sound effects, no voice acting, but sometimes you have to accommodate for stuff like that. But in this case, we're trying to hit emotional beats. And since visual novels tend to be very long, if you play through one complete playthrough of this game, it will run you about 10 to 12 hours of reading, honestly, and clicking on decision making. So one is to keep like the reader interested in the scene that they're in, so they have a cue. If it's a romantic scene, they'll get like a romantic track, but also tinged with this like 80s vibe that we want. In this case, Chelo Martinez, as you see on screen, is our detective heroine. This is her brand new detective agency. She's a private eye, and she hasn't had any clients yet. So we're going through her first 4 cases and how she struggles with the people around her, and we're gonna meet some of those like conflict-causing people who all have slightly different themes in terms of like how cello reacts to them. So some of the tracks we've ordered have been more like tension-raising. We want you to worry about our girl. And some of them are more romantic and conflicted, and some of them are more romantic and less conflicted. For this first case, we're still building some of the drama and getting you attached to our character. So right now, you're meeting her brother. He's Mickey, and he's kind of awful. So she's really expressing some reservations about going to talk to him. But what we played through the first part is Cello gets to decide what she wants to do with her day, and so we're going to hear some different music based on what her decision is. The game has been compared to Phoenix Wright, which makes me ecstatic because I love Phoenix Wright and that mode of mystery solving, but it doesn't have any pixel hunting. All you do is solve a basic reading comprehension quiz, and you too can be a junior detective.
I have to ask, is the you mentioned the emotional cues coming from the different relationships that Cello has. Is that something that's characteristic of other visual novels as well? Or is it something that is maybe unique to this game?
Yeah, I would say you hear it a lot, especially in visual novels that are trying to build a certain kind of mood. So another game that the kind of visual artists are all familiar with, I think, on this game is Danganronpa and Danganronpa 2, which is a mystery teen murder game, which has some sweet moments where you get to know some of your about to be murdered classmates, and there's also some like dread moments where you've seen a group gruesome murder, and you have to decide what to do with that decision. Like,
Gotcha.
that thing. And like Danganronpa 2 especially is set on a tropical island, so you're gonna hear a lot of similar musical ideas where they really wanted to build kind of a tropical, pleasant, just like a day at the beach vibe, but also like an uncomfortable dread that is like constantly approaching. So
We got
Also,
Where
an
did it
excellent
go?
soundtrack. The Danganronpa stuff. I love the music in those games.
so
I'm gonna go to the club, I think, and
So based on some of our
Changes, I don't
tests
know.
at cons, this has been hands down the favored track.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised. This was actually one of the harder ones for me to put together.
Really?
Yes, because I think the request was we want to have something with like a reggaeton backbeat, and that is a style of music that typically I just don't like. But as a composer, sometimes you have to write music that is not what you would prefer to write because it's what's required. But moreover, it's kind of like with most musical genres, there are ones where like 90% of the music is not great, but there's always those like 10% diamonds in the rough that you have to dig for. So Joe and Conrad introduced me to a couple of producers that I actually found I liked, and like when I went through their back catalog, like I found some reggaeton tracks that I never would have even looked at. They would have just passed over me, but I actually really like them. So I kind of got introduced to a new genre that I thought I didn't like, but then turned out, hey, actually there's some stuff in here that's pretty good. So I tried to lift a lot of those elements, like big strings, kind of bombastic horn sections,
Yes.
and then you're hearing that bump, 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 bump,
very
that drum
reminiscent
rhythm.
of not
You-
just reggae but Latino music in general.
Yep,
as
you
well.
have to have that clave kind of bass pattern.
Yeah.
Have to
So
have it.
Nefarious, yes, the Danganronpa composer has like amazing range and can cover a lot of like musical modes. Unfortunately, we don't have as much money for music compositions, and also like I tend to be a very big generalist when I'm ordering music tracks, so I tend to go for like, this scene's kind of steamy sounding, and then I'm gonna pass the mic to Conrad about midway through the stream because he speaks more intelligently about it as the writer. I get to be like, well, this one should be wistful, and I'll tell you what it's going behind later. So for ordering this, I was like, reggaeton, you're walking down the street and you hear it coming out of a car. That sounds good. To answer the second question, we chose reggaeton because so there's a lot of stuff with like resurrecting the 80s in the year of our Lord 2017. We are 30 years removed from the start point of Ghost of Miami, which is 1986. And I'm also feeling very old because that's around when I was born. And
My birthday's in 20 days.
Yeah, word.
so like we're gonna play Hotline Miami a little later, which arguably like kicked off this whole 80s revival trend. But part of what goes through like reinterpreting the 80s 30 years later means like bringing some of the synthwave sounds forward, but also polishing them with a little bit of like modern production like ideals. So in this case, I know reggaeton started in like the Latin Caribbean and like migrated up here as a mode of kind of like bravado. It rose a lot with like Latinx rap, and in a way it has its own problems as a genre and the people who perform the genre. But to me, it's a sound that's associated with this kind of like muggy, like a lot of bravado, manhood, Latinx sounds. So we wanted to pay a little bit of homage to it without strictly like borrowing from what is largely like a 90s mode of music.
Yeah, it's a really good point about production values too, and like it speaks to a lot of the tools that I used to, produce the music on this. There are some quintessential like 80s synthesizers that you can now pick up in digital form, like
A Moog.
yes, that's a good one. But there's for anybody who's interested in producing 80s sounding music, here's the secret. You want to go pick up the Korg Legacy Collection, which includes 2 gems that you'll need. One is the Korg M1. And the other is the Korg Poly 6. And later when we're playing Hotline Miami, which has some perturbator tracks in it, like that is basically a demo track for the Korg Poly 6. It's like a very versatile instrument when you want to get those rhythmic arpeggiated bass lines and stuff going on. So there's that. But to try and have like a more modern sound, something that didn't sound like we lifted it from the 80s, like I've been using more modern synthesizers. Like all over the soundtrack, you're going to hear the Spectrasonic stuff, particularly Omnisphere, Stylus RMX. I love everything those guys do. And then for the more traditional instruments, you're going to hear a lot of Contact sample libraries from the Native Instruments suite. Session Horns Pro features prominently on this track. Like every time we need those trumpet swells. You know, I need a good recording of those. That's not a thing that's easy to synthesize. So you know, you want those to be clean rather than having some cheesy like Casio sound, even if that would be more authentic. So it is really about striking a balance and paying homage more than just like strictly recreating what people did in the 80s with their music.
Sure, not just saying, oh, we want it to sound cleaner, let's use a live musician. Like, no, you still want it to have that kind of synthesized sound, like you're saying.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be too clean or too exact.
Yes.
But
like,
just
absolutely.
somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm. And there are some production tricks too. You guys know "In the Air Tonight," you know, pretty famous 80s power ballad, basically. There's a trick that if you search on Wikipedia for it, will tell you exactly how to do it, called gated reverb. And the idea is that you drown the drums in reverb, but you put a noise gate on them so you don't get the full reverb tail. So the reverb will actually cut off, and what you get instead is a drum sound that has a whole lot of space, but it clips off to leave space for the other elements in the track. And in the Air Tonight, when you hear that like tom fill, it's using that. It's like the perfect example of that, and those drums are huge. So that's all over 80s music, and that innovation sort of came out then, and that's borrowed a lot here as well to get that sound, which sounds like overly processed drum samples, as opposed to like the club-ready sounds that we can pick up now in 2017. So.
Yeah, and speaking of like In the Air Tonight, a lot of how we ordered these tracks, like because we're going 80s inspired, we had a lot of inspiration to draw from. So basically I would write down a variety of like moods, and then Conrad and I would dig through and decide like what kind of sound do we want. So I had like a weird track that was 80s synthwave, like driving down a highway too fast in the middle of the night with the windows down. And then we did some digging around. We found, oh my gosh, let me pull up the exact thing, because this is it really puts me on blast because it was definitely a Devo track that I wanted everyone to listen to. New Order, of course, and then Conrad put on some more sophisticated inspiration tracks. Yeah, Danger Zone for the title track, which you heard on the start screen. Like literally all of my notes were Airwolf theme. Do the theme to Airwolf.
I remember.
Do the theme to Airwolf, and we had a phone meeting where that was my only contribution. Basically, I'm useless.
No, it was actually a really good meeting, and so pro tip for all the composers, like. Pro tip now, like get your stream stuff, get your stream stuff on lockdown, because like what you want is, and it was a really productive meeting. Like I had the intro theme written, but believe it or not, the melody was originally piano, so it was like very kind of plinky plunky, and I was really in video game music, like JRPG mode. And then Joe came in and was like, no, think different. And so what we did together, while I was streaming streaming Logic Pro to them, you know, the software, sequencing software that I use, and we were just going through synthesizer presets. Like, do you like this one? Do you like this one? We narrowed it down, and then we were able to like sort of agree on a sound direction because we could all hear the same thing. So we had like a common language. And then with those notes, I went back and fixed up the melody, and then I think we arrived at something we all liked. So, you know, hey, the internet, like it makes collaboration possible. You don't have to go off into a cave and emerge with a fully formed track. Yeah. Sometimes, you know, you bring people in because there isn't really a good language to talk about music sometimes.
You don't have to be in the studio. You could be on a Skype call, pushing buttons on a synthesizer. I think that's amazing.
Exactly.
Just the barrier, so to speak, for creating game music is not like, I want to say it's not quite like film in that regard. It's not like you need to have the studio musicians at the London Symphony, this or that, Philharmonic kind of thing. You can be somebody in your apartment just with your same musicals, and then just once you find that common ground with your producers, it seems like that's the most important part. Yeah,
the other way that we sort of arrived at that common ground, like fortunately Joe and Conrad gave me a bunch of sample tracks to work with, like make it sound sort of like this is the vibe we're going for. But then we together had like a collaborative Spotify playlist, which was cool because as we were listening to stuff, just in our daily lives, we could throw things on that playlist, like, oh, this has kind of a sound that I'm going for. And then whenever I am like at my day job and then I know I need to go home and work on Ghost of Miami music, I will listen to that playlist during my day job. And I think there's like 10 hours of music on it now, so it lasts a long time. And then that just sort of puts ideas in my head so that by the time I get back to the studio, I'm in that mode and ready to go. And I sort of have the context that I need. So as a composer, producer, arranger, like it's good to have, you know, sort of a catalog of music ready to listen to, and sort of like you have to be your own librarian in that sense and keep lists of things that work in certain contexts or other contexts, depending on what projects you have.
So when you were giving notes to Casey as far as the kind of track you were looking to incorporate in the game, were you describing a specific scene in the game that you were going for, like a story beat that was actually going to be end up in the finished product, or were you just describing like a mood or a general feeling, or maybe some kind of combination of both?
So it started out as moods and general feelings, and then as we got a lot more of the artwork turned in, and as the writing finished itself, it writes itself really
good. Yeah. That's how visual novels work.
It doesn't take months of grueling hard work. As more of the scenes took shape, and we got more of the backgrounds and the dramatic CGs turned in, I was able to fill in our music request grid with more of like the flavor of each scene, the color palette that we were using in the scene. Of course, we always had Kim's really awesome like neon colors to inspire us, sucking up to the stream.
Yeah. What's up? Shout outs to Kim in the stream.
Yeah. Shouts to chat. We definitely like built a lot. So the Bankside was, I think, our second or third background that we had, and also our second or third music track, because it was just inspiration was available for us from all directions. We Yasmin, who is responsible for this background and is a bit of a Miami person. I guess a lot of a Miami person, like really brought in some vivid colors, some like great contrasts. When we talked about colors with both Yasmin and Cassie, I was like super into Gatchaman crowds at the time, so you can see that the sprites have these like purple highlights and everything looks really neon, but they also work together to make sure that the sprites stood out from the backgrounds in a way where you know who's talking, which is one of the bigger challenges to making a visual novel. And that's part of the music as well, that people need to be able to imagine these characters talking. Since most of the game's meat is in dialogue, you need to be able to imagine people like talking over the track, or you know, hearing the track as either diegetic or non-diegetic. Should I explain this?
I was just about to talk about that, in fact.
Tell us about diegetic and non-diegetic.
So I have a love affair with using like swapping from diegetic to non-diegetic in terms of music. For those of you who haven't done any like media studies at all, diegetic means sounds that the characters in the medium can hear. So like for horror movies, generally all the sounds are non-diegetic, all of the music, until someone like turns off a radio and cuts off the music. And I think that's like a very jarring moment that brings players or viewers like into the scene a little deeper. For our first game, We Know the Devil, it's a horror themed game, and our artist on that, Alec Lambert, designed this like beautiful soundscape, and then worked with the writer and the artist to like slot the sounds in where it would fit the mode. But sometimes it was like the music would flow over the ominous crackling of a radio, which meant the devil was trying to communicate with the characters. And the way the crackling worked with the music tracks was like very ominous and reminiscent, but also hit a lot of kind of like gamer forebrain stuff who are familiar with like the Silent Hill genre, where automatically the crackling of a radio means danger. So we love employing like some sound engineering tricks in terms of making people feel like what music is in the scene, what music can people hear, and what music are the characters engaging with directly. In this case, they're in the club. This is the club's music, and like later there will be a little bit of a shift, and I'm going to ask Tracy a question, which is, how does it feel to have made a music track for this video game?
Oh yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
Speaking of real instruments, we'll put you on the spot now.
Put me on the spot. So yeah, We call ourselves the Runtime Errors. We are project buddies in the orchestra, do a lot of the small ensemble performances. And I will never forget the day Joe asked us, "Hey, can you do bad punk?" And we were like, "Yes."
I mean, keyword like high school girl garage band punk, like not super polished. Like this has to be the raw deal.
So these two characters on screen, Lucy and Cello, are around 23 years old, and when they were in high school, they were in a Riot Girl garage band called the Tank Tops. So we asked Tracy and the Runtime Errors, please make us a track, and it will play several times in the game where you will be able to hear Tracy's amazing screaming and my horrible words, which I whipped up in an afternoon and forgot to revise, and we decided just to keep it because it sounds like high school girl nonsense. So.
Yeah, would the characters have revised it, or would this be like scrawled in the back of a composition notebook, right?
Brought a lot of truth to that role.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to point out about this game that I think is distinct from other, like a lot of other visual novels, is how you can see Cello when she's talking, which I think is a cool design decision because, you know, you get to see her reactions too. Do you want to say anything more about that? Because I think that's pretty unique.
Yeah, we ordered about 1 million faces. Conrad's making a face at me like he wants to say something.
You want to pop in?
You want to lean in?
Yeah, I don't know how this might pick up. I'm gonna try to
just talking to Joe's body. Everything will be fine.
Okay.
Stream shenanigans.
Hey, good stream shenanigans. Yeah, so this kind of presentation where a character appears in the bottom left-hand corner of a visual novel isn't completely unheard of. I actually took the inspiration personally from an Overdrive game called Deerdrops. The thing visual novels sometimes do that drives me up the wall, though, is sometimes they will put the character in the lower left-hand corner, but also on the stage. So you'll see the character's face like 2 times, and it's like kind of a pet peeve of mine.
Lord Docs. No, we had a plan, Tracy. We talked about this.
So that was something that No, you can't.
No,
You're
can
gone now.
never go back.
No, it's fine. Yeah, that was something that was really important to me, was like having Cello as a persistent feature down there, so you could always kind of understand, like you said, her reactions, but at the same time, never duplicating the corner and the stage elements, which again is something I've seen games do in the past. So that was something I was like very on about. I had like very little hard direction as to where how things must be scripted. That was like my hard direction. Never ever in the corner and on the stage ever.
Yeah, I seem to remember that being a sticking point, but it works really well because you can see her reaction plus the character that she's talking to, no matter who's speaking, which is cool. And also Cello's adorable. So I like seeing her faces more often. Like that one's really cute. And the other one was cute, and like the pensive tongue out is cute. So I don't know, I like looking at her. I think she's adorable.
So we're hearing Morning Scramble again, but this is a really good illustration of how we'll reuse a track for 2 different scenes. So my description of the song was, it should be sunny, like you're walking down a kind of crowded street and maybe doing some shopping. So in terms of ordering music, be better about it than I am. My advantage is that I'm lazy, but I'm also industrious insofar as I will put in as much information as requested. I wrote a little bit of a dev blog post a couple weekends ago about how general I try to be, because we like to let our artists inspire us. So there's a bit of a feedback loop where this game, you can read the text, but if you've been following along, this game is actually pretty dark in terms of themes that it explores. 1986 Miami was like a pretty dark place. So there were 600 murders a year. They had to rent extra trucks, refrigerated vehicles, just to accommodate all the corpses in the morgue. And we definitely didn't want to be inspired by Miami and not confront its darker elements. Yeah. However, when we got the images in of the sprites, we got a design pass in, and then we asked Cassie to give us some polish, let us know what the final game sprites would look like, and they were so bubbly and cute that we designed the whole game to look like neon noir. It's mystery solving, there's grim themes, but there's always this cheerful impression. Our heroine is always happy and is constantly trying her best, and I think the music also reflects a lot of that. The music reflects kind of how we want you to feel about cello. So in this case, she's like bright, she's got a lot of energy. She's solving the mystery and you're solving it through her eyes, and like the music should give you energy. This is my favorite NPC in the game.
I should note, Joe, actually, we spoke about Danganronpa earlier, and the Danganronpa 2 actually, like, overworld theme, that beachy theme, was one of the inspo tracks we used for this one. We also took 2 out of Persona 4 Golden for inspo on this one.
So donate to the Washington Metro Gamer Symphony Orchestra to get Tracy a bigger couch, maybe.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to tag in later, but no, that's fine.
I'll stool somewhere. It's fine.
Okay.
I think also, like, speaking personally, a lot of the inspiration for the music kind of comes from the fact that although 1980s Miami was a very dangerous place, like, it is maybe not so dangerous to cello. Like, it's sort of her community and her world, and she is more or less safe there, but she is dealing in her community with a lot of people who are not safe. So a lot of the optimism that comes through from the music is sort of like representative of cello's optimism, which is, I think, what Joe was alluding to. But also, you want to see, if you look at my 1980 Miami's on paper, 1980s Miami on paper, you might think like, oh wow, I don't know how you could feel safe there. So we sort of want to create that feeling of safety, like it's almost a given, but then also, like Joe was saying, pay respect to the fact that it is kind of dangerous, and that's where the plot and the themes sort of take over. But the general impression is one of safety, sort of like stepping out on your own from home base in a way, like the JRPG leaving the village thing.
So how do you combine those 2 moods as far as building a sense of optimism and not quite hope, but steadfastness, but also a sense of danger and a sense of something not quite. That's what I'm looking for.
Sure, no, I get what you're saying. So it's a good question, and it's difficult, and I think it's also, it relates a lot to the fact that, like, you have video game music in general, right? This track is going to play in loop until we're done with the scene, and you will hear it again in the game, and you're going to be hearing it a lot. So one of the ways in which, like, writing video game music is going to differ from writing traditional music is, like, sort of avoiding the overt resolutions that you tend to get in music. Like, you're not going to hear a lot of 2-5-1s in the score because we're not going to land on home base, which feels like you're done because you're never really done. So you have to work with, like, deceptive cadences or tensions, especially over the tonic, to, like, sort of extend the tension a little bit. And maybe it feels like a resolution, but also we're leading into the next thing. So that's also how you set the mood, right? Because you don't want the song, unlike a film, like, we're not concluding with the scene, and I don't say, ta-da, the scene is done. Instead, like, the music has to continue to roll. And in a way, that's true of the adventure also. Like, nothing's ever fully settled musically. I defer to the text and defer to the narrative to bring in that resolution.
Well, there's a lot of space between his name and that thing.
Or should we be taking notes?
Bug report. This is good as a developer, just sitting around playing your own game. A thing that I wanted to point out, because we talked about it a little earlier in terms of the musical modes of this game, I am a crime-solving junkie, and I love crime television. We watched a lot of Miami Vice for this, but we also watched a lot of Columbo.
Yes.
And Docs. And we also watched a lot of Columbo and a lot of Murder, She Wrote. Now, if you recall the theme of Murder, She Wrote, which I definitely do, it reflects part of what Jessica Fletcher is like as a detective. And a thing about, like, Jessica Fletcher and Columbo and the 60s, 70s era detectives is they really have, like, kind of an Arthur Conan Doyle mode of like solving crimes. So they interview people and they find inconsistencies in what the people say so that they can have now wait just a minute here, and or like, wait 1 second, you said this but then you said this, there's an inconsistency, and that's bad.
Classical mystery formula,
Right.
As opposed to, like, golden age mystery or what comes later.
Then in the late 80s we started up, or the late 90s we started up the CSI machine, which is evidence-focused crime solving. So the big mystery for the viewer isn't like who lied and how can we get them by tricking them into saying something wrong, but rather here's the evidence that proves that you're wrong. You don't have to say anything at all. I think what's a little different about Ghosts of Miami, which we wanted the music to reflect, was Cello doesn't solve mysteries because she has police training or forensic training. And she's not super good about interviewing people, particularly at the beginning. She's like awkward, and since you get to be in her head a little bit, you kind of have to be her to a certain extent. So she's about as good as crime solving as I am. What she does, though, is she knows her neighborhoods very well, and she does feel secure in them. So part of the game is an exploration of this part of Miami in this time period. And cute fact, my mom is translating the game into Mandarin Chinese, and she has used it as a tour guide to Miami, where she's currently living. So she's been exploring neighborhoods, which are much safer now than the neighborhoods in the game.
Mom with the dogs.
But yeah, you can go to Dodge Island now, and it's very pretty. And I don't mention explicitly that this is Dodge Island, but our artists knew, I knew, we have a geography all laid out that you can actually follow along a lot of the crimes of the game on a map. Because I planned a lot of this game using Google Maps, and also we took a big research trip to Miami where we just wandered around and saw kind of what the neighborhoods and what the enclaves were like, and that really informed like how we built the game and how we ordered the art and the music.
I think it's a really good point, especially for mysteries in general. One of the things that, like, amateur mystery writers, hi, right here, one of the things that we tend to forget a lot is that the mystery really, especially Golden Age mysteries, are going to come from the characters' interactions with their culture. So part of playing this game is you are visiting another culture, and you get to learn sort of what, like, the cultural norms and expectations of that culture and the characters who live within it. And that's part of that world is key to kind of solving these mysteries, is like understanding what makes these people tick and why, because of the existential question. They live in Miami at this time, therefore these are the kinds of things that they may be involved with. Like, what's going on with Mickey's new job down at the docks that he's super cagey about? Well, I mean, there's a lot that you can speculate about there based on the time and the place and what we're doing. And certainly Cello is a little skeptical about what he's doing too.
But she's sharp, like she just mentioning, she saw these guards, Mickey dropped the name Richard, she immediately picks on, like, who is that? You know, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. We have read Nancy Drew. Moreover, I have played the Nancy Drew point-and-click adventure games, which are excellent. And another thing about mystery games, there are a ton of mystery games that you might not have heard of if you follow, like, Steam News or, like, you know, game blogs, because a lot of these point-and-click adventure mystery games were targeted towards women. So every year, literally every year, since like sometime in the early 90s, there's been a Nancy Drew video game. And I know a woman who has played all of them and swears that they're only getting better. And I hadn't played them at all, so we had to like buy a couple of them and play them. There's like, I think there's a Barbie mystery solving game.
Yes,
there's like
there is.
And for fans of Australian television, there's going to be a Miss Fisher's murder mystery game. If you haven't seen Miss Fisher, she
recommended.
She investigates crimes in flapper 30s Australia, and in this game, you will definitely get to dress her up. It looks so cool, but I'm really excited for the Miss Fisher's murder mystery games. They look adorable, and like a lot of this kind of like girl game side genre is part of why visual novels are so important to women players. Our other two 80s games that we're featuring, I'm gonna say, are a little bit more male focused. You're gonna see it in the color palette and you're gonna hear it in the music. And I don't know if it's like good to gender music, but video games traditionally like target groups of people. In terms of visual novels, they target women players, because like women are traditionally more focused on character development and like building
Story.
relationships
Yeah.
with people. This is not me saying so, because I know a ton of men who play visual novels and love like chilling out and making decisions. But in terms of the way these games are marketed, you're gonna see like a profile on the action, a profile on relationships, and you'll kind of get a hint of where those targets are.
It's interesting you say not trying to gender the music. You know what first popped into my mind was actually the 2012 Olympics, when they were having this kind of wrap up on NBC, and it was like showing the men's sports, and it was this rousing, inspiring horns. It sounded a lot like Call of Duty, and then they started showing a montage of the women's sports, and it was Call Me Maybe. And it was just like this two completely different tones they're trying to evoke with the music for the men versus the women. Like, oh, the women are having fun, it's a party, yay! And the men like, no, this is determined and heroic and amazing. And it was the kind of thing that you hear. I'm not going to say like if there's a clear divide between men's and women's kind of music and games, but when you talk about the kinds of stuff that it's meant to like signify this is a men's story versus this is a women's story, it's not just games that do that.
No, absolutely. And I think visual novels are like right now one of the adventure games too, fortunately. But these sort of like narrative-driven genres are kind of the only place, even now, in games where you get voices that you don't typically hear. Like, and I'm just going to say women are among them, but also like minority voices, gay and lesbian voices, transgender voices. Like, if you want these kinds of experiences, if you want to hear these kinds of voices in games, sometimes like you have to step off into a more narrative realm, because it's difficult to make those things come through in like some of the games, well, one of the games that we're going to be looking at later, which has very little story attached to it. It's a hella good game, and we love it. So that's not a knock against it, but it also doesn't leave a lot of room for that kind of nuance. So for me, like working on narrative-driven games from a music standpoint, and hopefully eventually a writing standpoint, because that's like another thing I like to do, that's particularly rewarding in a different way. And the music is not so much like, oh, make it sound like Skyrim because our game kind of looks like Skyrim. It's, well, these are the emotions that you're dealing with. And that is a lot more interesting to me as a composer, to try and work with, here's the emotional expressivity of what's going on. Here's what the scene is trying to convey. So have the music bolster that or reflect that.
Versus now we need the battle music. Now we need the boss battle music. Like now we need the town music kind of thing.
And like, and to be fair, I love all that music. Like, you know, I still listen to that damn Bravely Default battle theme. And that person's name is like, I will listen to that on repeat because of how hype it gets me. But like, yeah, there's a different skill required, right? Like, and I think if you are a budding video game composer, arranger, what have you, then like, maybe think about the kinds of music that you like to write, or what excites you about writing music. Is it the rhythms? Is it the melody? Do you like harmonies? Do you like texture and soundscapes? And there are different kind of genres of game that respond to those things. So I like melody and harmony and sort of this like the emotional impact of music. So I try to find narrative because that's where I can express that. But if you instead like to do, you know, super hype rhythmic stuff, first of all, there are a lot of rhythm games, but also like action games, platformers are like really well suited to that. So, you know, find the music that you like to write and then seek out the kinds of people who are making those games, and then you'll find like a good fit. That's one of the ways in which like writing music for, say, a visual novel might be different from writing music for a first-person shooter.
James, is that you in the chat? That's awesome. Our friend James is the writer on Defragmented, so he's given us some insight on the split between the action scenes and the VN scenes in Defragmented. We're coming up on the end of this demo, but I just want to talk about, you love this like deep bass sound for my dangerous older dude sexy option.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a romance option.
And this was a fun one to write too, because this one, like, I tried to keep the synthesizer sounds straight out of the 80s, so you have like these analog swells and plinky plunky, again, Korg M1, look it up. But I'm also, this is one of those places where all the drum sounds are modern, right? Like I'm using the biggest, most compressed kicks that I can find. I got these like trill sounding hi-hats, like almost trap sounding, right? Like 30-second notes and really tight triplet fills. So that brings like a modern kind of vibe to the whole thing, but while keeping it grounded in the 80s with sort of the harmonic and the melodic elements to it.
Was the bass line something that is also 80s reminiscent, would you say, or was that
honestly
more?
no? The bass line is pretty modern. The sound itself, but the rhythm, where you're hearing the bom bom bom
Yes.
bom 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 bom, this sort of a polyrhythm feel. Whereas in 80s, you're going to hear a lot of straight eighths or straight 16ths just right on the grid.
Yes.
And that's partially a factor of like the fact that we had these sequencers and these drum machines that had 16 pads on them, and you just like hit the ones you wanted, and people be like, I want all of them. Give me every of the notes. And so they would like toggle all of them, and you hear da 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 forever,
Yes.
and get these arpeggiations and stuff, and that's typical of the 80s sound. So this is sort of divorced from that, but I think the sonic landscape in terms of everything that's not a drum is still grounded in the 80s, and that's sort of how we get that like sinister, anticipatory vibe out of it.
Yeah, so we're gonna be wrapping up this demo soon, but
Yeah, that's it's a little. But you can go on a date with this guy if you want to know what his deal is. If you want to get to know him more, Mysterious Mr. Richard, like that is available to you. I'm
his
just saying.
date's really good.
I'm just saying, like when we were talking about, sometimes there's going to be a love theme that like is a little less certain than the other love theme. I think that's probably the one you're going to hear in that date. And there's one other character that applies to you, but I'm not going to say who.
To find out more
Yes.
on mid-August.
So this is our Gordon Gecko, but sexy. Oh, I shouldn't say but sexy, because I know some people are super into that. And I'm not putting them on blast. Magnolia Porter. But, editor of this game and comptroller of the tone of Richard's character. She's very protective of making sure he is as sexy dangerous as I intended him to be. So
I love that disarming skeptical face that we just saw, where it's like, maybe he's a good guy after. No, hold it.
You are very lovely in person.
yeah, I am blessed with an amazing art and music team that really kind of buried themselves in the lore of this game to encapsulate all of the characters. So Yasmin's background has a lovingly rendered shoe collection, which I wanted to be some storytelling, some storytelling in place about what kind of human Richard is. The Nagal-inspired portraiture in the back there used to be much racier. We toned it down a bit.
You can see the curve of a back and the outline of a something.
Yeah.
But that's about it, and you do have to look for it, but it is there.
But the artwork, the music feeds into the mood that we were trying to create with the game. And in this case, sometimes maybe you have a crush on an older dude. Who's to know? Who's gonna judge you? No one. Not here.
Yeah, in fact, I think it's safe to say that most of the characters you can get to know in this game are potential romance options, regardless of your gender preference, which is something that we like to see. And again, that's sort of like a space that only visual novels and adventure games are sort of exploring at this time in games. So.
Also, Tracy saved me from myself so that we didn't have to read any of these lines out loud, because I've seen some Let's Plays of our demo where they do read the lines out loud, and boy, as a creator, that is deeply inspiring. It's so no, it's so good. I love it when people stream our demo and our other games. It brings a lot of like homegrown character to the individuals on screen that I don't think you'd otherwise get. Of course, if we could afford full voice acting, we would have considered it for this. But as what we call ourselves a micro indie, because the development team is literally me and Conrad. So we basically add polish where we can, and we put our efforts into things that we can afford, like music that sounds great. But we also focus kind of our hiring on, people without as much like professional credentials, or people who are starting their careers, or doing this as a very enthusiastic hobby. A lot of our freelancers also have like second or third jobs, or we're one of 3 freelance gigs that they're on at any given time. And we really like you know, bringing in kind of like fresh talent and exposing it, especially since like our games are like they tend to bring in people who don't consider themselves gamers. So I saw earlier on the chat someone said, like, I know people who play those Nancy Drew games who never call themselves gamers. This is the kind of game like that, where there's no quick reaction time, like a Telltale game, which is very similar in a lot of ways, very reading focused, mystery focused, but you have to do these instinctive things. Another thing that the music, I think, is super important for is that this game is going to be not fully voice acted, but it will be fully blind playable, because we're going to tie it in with text-to-speech software, so you will be able to hear like a raspy Siri voice if you need that accessibility option, and I'm really, really proud of that. So we wanted some visual and some visual elements. It is a visual novel, but also a lot of audio cues, and like the blind accessibility option is going to have like some more words aloud that describe the scene, that describe the sprite figures on the screen, and you'll be able to scroll through and see like what is going on, even if you can't see the screen traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
It's really cool, especially as a composer. Like, I'm very excited to hear that, you know, the game is going to be available to people who can't see it, because, you know, if you can't see, then your other senses, I'm told, are heightened, and so the music is going to become that much more important for setting the tone and the mood. So, you know, composers out there, like, take it upon yourself to, you know, make sure that your music can reflect that part of the game, because hopefully in the future we're going to see more of this, and like your music might be the thing that's setting the tone.
It might be the key piece of information you get about a certain place or a specific character, or just the information that you get on the screen.
Yeah, before a single word is spoken, you know, the player can know where they are in the game space by the musical cues.
So I think we're almost getting to the point where we're going to switch into defragmented, which means I'm going to go into a little bit of boss mode, because so this is the first like composer stream as opposed to an arranger stream. So we ordered all of this music so that we would own it and we would be able to sell a soundtrack for it. Not every game with like a specific music idea in mind has like devotes the resources to doing this, partially because like we, like I said, decided to focus on, you know, music and not voice acting, certain things and not certain other things. In the case of Defragmented, I love that James is on our chat, so he can talk a little bit about it, but we're going to talk about the difference between commissioned music that was like original for this game and licensed music, which I know Defragmented takes a lot of. So in terms of licensure, like as a game publisher or developer, you don't get to sell those tracks, but you do get to like essentially rent them for use in a game specifically. And there's like different challenges to ordering music that specifically fits the scene, or you know, ordering music part of an artist of that, you know, what kind of genre that you want and that you can slot in behind a scene. So James said in the chat earlier, there are action scenes and VN scenes, and then we're going to hear the music shift in between the two of them. And James is saying that Defragmented had the budget for one original theme, which they used in the VN scenes. So you're going to hear in the action scenes some more like the kind of pounding synthwave 80s stuff that we're going to hear a lot of in Hotline Miami, and hopefully it'll show kind of a transition between actiony 80s synthwave and like romantic and plot-focused 80s stuff that you can definitely get access to. Oh man, I promised I wouldn't gesture, and my arms are flailing everywhere. So on that note, I'm going to pass the mic over to Conrad, since he is way more of an aficionado of this 80s synthwave stuff. And have a good rest of the stream, everyone.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Joe.
Joe.
Yeah, so we'll listen to a bit of the title track now. Switching, another first for the stream, switching games. So
Yeah.
let's get Conrad set up here. And James, we're so happy that you joined us. That was not expecting us. Yeah, feel free to chime in if you've got some notes or tidbits. But the big thing that really jumps out at me with Defragmented is it's using roughly the same sample set and the same kind of instruments, if you will, as Ghost of Miami uses, but to make an extremely different tone. So it's not trying to tell a crime story or even a story on the beach in Miami, like where ghosts take place. It is trying to tell the story of an 80s style future, of something like Blade Runner, something like Neuromancer, and I just think that is so cool. Okay, we're gonna
it has great tunes. I can say that. A lot of the sonic soundscape is very similar, and I think what you're going to hear in Defragmented that's different from the Ghost of Miami soundtrack is more of an emphasis on rhythm, kind of slower but more complex harmonic movement. So fewer chords but bigger chords, right? These are chords that have lots of extensions on them. So beyond your traditional triadic harmony, we're going to start adding sevenths, we're going to start adding ninths to get that lush, rich sound, along with all those analog synths in there that create this like beautiful swirly texture. And that really sets a mood. Very much Blade Runner. We're all big fans of...
Vangelis, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, is it Vangelis? Vangelis?
I believe.
Yeah, Greek composer, master, total master. If you're not familiar with his work on Blade Runner, Chariots of Fire, or his personal work, definitely go look him up. Good stuff. Yeah, lots of big analog synth swells and like kind of bending the pitch one way or the other just a little bit to create this like drift. And that's the kind of sound that I associate with like future or cyberpunk type 80s sounds in that palette. And for Ghost, it's more like JRPG type music, but with an 80s palette. Like it's melody driven. There are very specific phrases. You know, this part ends, this part begins. It's less about creating like one seamless texture or vibe and sort of creating like ups and downs, which is kind of to mimic the conversational tone of the game.
Sure.
Yeah, for me, when I was ordering music in Ghost of Miami, like I love this like neon, magenta, cyan, like this very heavy kind of design palette. For Ghost of Miami, you know, obviously we went to Miami, we saw a lot of the pastels, the Art Deco influence, and so I wanted, in particular, the music of our game to kind of denote that. I wanted it visually to denote that and like acoustically to denote that, and so like, you know, I completely understand like the emphasis on like, you know, that kind of retrofuturism, let's call it, in the composition here, particularly in regards to like the visual design, which again looks great. James, A+.
Yeah, it's A+ is right, and like. In Ghosts, we use a lot of sampled instruments. You know, Morning Scramble, the piano is forefront, but there's also just straight up a sampled flute. Like wind instruments, again, sort of, we wanted to do that callback to Latin music specifically, samba clave patterns, all of that. Here, like you get a largely digital, lush soundscape, but what's cool about it is that even though the sounds are all digital or all synthesized, like you don't get the sort of clippy, robotic computer sound, and that is something that comes out of the 80s a lot, right?
Yes.
Like the old Kraftwerk kind of music. It's very like rhythmic, robotic. It's like the inner workings of a clock almost. And electronic music or like retro-futuristic music that uses these sort of analog sounds does not have to sound that way. You can go big and lush, and that is a great way to create like a romantic feeling, even though you have all of these artificial sounds.
And James says, I like to refer to this vibe as the imagined 80s, stuff like Kung Fury, which has people reinterpreting the 80s after, 30 years, like Joe was saying earlier. Yeah, Kung Fury is another really excellent example of this kind of celebration of the style and the sound that is reminiscent, but also is unique in its own way. It's not a direct copy. It is still not quite a remix either, but like we're lifting it up, saying, remember this and remember how wonderful it was, and we enjoy it all together.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of common sort of composition techniques in 80s music that come out in like Kung Fury, which has that David Hasselhoff theme is so baller, and it creates these like, it has these like virtuosic, you know, guitar parts in it, where people like, especially in 80s power ballads, were not sort of afraid to come out and be really emotional and really earnest with their musical solos, and that gets dialed back a lot now, where everything is very, very produced, but it's like more ostinatos and fewer solos, especially instrumental. but yeah, and when we're reviving that, it's like we're bringing back sort of that sensibility of like, I'm going to be vulnerable and bare my soul to you musically, but then we're making the sound just like 10 times bigger because we have much better equipment, we have computers, we have better recording gear, and we can like limit and compress the hell out of all of our tracks now, and you can get that really big sound. So the emotional impact's even bigger, and personally, that's just what I love about all this 80s revival stuff.
Yes.
And James brings this up, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. You know, the soundtrack for Kung Fury was done by Mitch Murder, who was one of he's like the grandfather, one of the grandfathers of synthwave. You know, he was ground floor in that whole scene, and James actually got one of Mitch Murder's songs in the game, which boo howdy, like if I was making
that's a good pedigree, my friend.
Yeah, seriously, I'm genuinely envious. I don't think it would slot into Ghosts like perfectly, right? But like on another project, nothing would make me happier than to have some Mitch Murder in there.
Yeah, maybe someday. Maybe it's Pillow Fight needs to find a project that they can build around a Mitch Murder soundtrack.
2 tracks, James. Goodness, yeah. There's 2 songs in there.
Rub it in.
It's rub it in. No, I mean, again, Casey. Obviously, I'm not. This isn't just a platitude because you're sitting on the couch with me. I'm so happy with the music we have in Ghosts. You know, I think it fits our tone perfectly.
Yes.
Someday, though.
Yes.
Someday.
It's interesting you mentioned vulnerability in the performance from 80s style music, because I remember listening to White Wedding from Billy Idol the other day, and how it's just him singing.
Yeah.
There's no auto-tune.
There's nowhere to hide.
Right, yeah. It's, he's doing all the shouts and the kind of thing in his voice. There's nothing to help. And right, like you said, there's nothing to hide. So it feels that much more passionate. And with Blondie as well, it's only her with this amazing rounded tone. Like there's very little to make it sound digitally sweet or digitally fuller or more high pitched like a lot of pop music seems to be.
I mean, yeah. Nowadays we've had Pro Tools for a long time. In fact, the late '80s, I think. But the technology has gotten so much better, so much cheaper. Computers have gotten so much faster. We are now really able to sand all of the rough edges off of all of our music, and in a way, we expect that now, especially from our pop music. Like it has to be perfectly polished. Any wrong note, any out of time note, any of that stuff, it has to go. And now live performances are often almost exclusively backed by backing tracks, and like drummers have to play to a click so that they can be perfectly on time. And 30 years ago, that just wasn't a thing. Like people were not doing that. And so some of these like raw takes or like live performances, you really hear sort of the humanity in the performance. And for someone who like reveres other musicians, it can be very useful and illustrative to hear like, oh yeah, that is actually a person playing that, and they're not perfect either. Right. Even though if you pay like $150 to see Madonna in concert, like she's going to be perfect. I can promise you, like that performance is polished to a T, and they did a lot of work on it. But she is still human underneath all of that, and it's good to remember that. Like when you are sitting in your studio, having a crisis moment of like, I don't know how to write music or play music, and I don't know what I'm doing, and it's like everybody does go through that. And there's a really great Ira Glass quote too that you should look up if you aren't aware of it. He talks about creativity and how your ability doesn't catch up to your taste, but your taste is what makes you killer. And you have to put in the work, and you will get there. But in the beginning, it feels like everything you make sucks because your taste just so far eclipses your ability. So if you Google search Ira Glass creativity, he puts it a lot better than I do. Definitely take it to heart if you're a creative, like if you're a visual artist, if you're a writer, if you're a musician, or if you're all of those things. Keep that in mind and be patient with yourself. And remember, like, we have the tools now to create sonically perfect music, but that's not necessarily what goes in at the start, right? That's not how the sausage goes into the sausage grinder. It's just what comes out the other end.
Yeah, and hey, if you're ever stuck, just do what I do. If you have good taste and you're really bad at making music, just hire somebody who's good at it. That worked great for me. No. For real though, like this kind of like collaborative effort that we've been able to cultivate during this project, I think is like really special. I think we've done some really, really good work together, and it's been a pleasure.
Yes, I'm super happy. Like, yeah, I don't know if like I haven't cleared this with you guys to say, so feel free to cut me off. But like, breaking news. No,
that was my favorite Mitch Murder album.
what Joe said earlier is important. Like, Pillow Fight is a team that is working with like new voices. They're finding people like me who don't have a ton of credits, right? But we are eager and like want to do work. So if you're out there and you're like, how do I get started, right? You need to find teams like theirs to work with, or find a group of your friends who have skills and create your own passion project and like get it out there. You can't necessarily wait to get hired or be discovered or like get the right credentials, or you have to like put forth the effort and get out there and create opportunities. So I really admire the fact that like Pillow Fight in particular is creating opportunities for artists who like myself, you know, we just haven't had them yet. And what I think is really cool about that is you get people, because they're sort of cutting their teeth, you get like real raw emotional like content out of it. And that can be, you know, it may not be, especially in my case, like as polished as some of the other stuff that comes out, but at the same time, you might really get close to something honest and artistic in there that, again, hasn't sort of been sanded away through experience and through like making compromises and trying to please everybody. It's really interesting to hear what comes out of people who are currently developing their voices. So if that's you, you can find people or create that team yourself to make this happen. Like, I'm sure you guys hear all the time, like, how do you get into the game? How do you get into the game industry? It's like, you make a game. You know, like, how do you get into the comics industry? You draw a comic. And like, then the question is, who's going to buy it? But that's a different problem. Like, you're in the industry at that point. You put it up on Gumroad or Amazon or self-published or whatever you have to do, but like, you have to make the thing. And it's that's a plunge that we all have to take. So.
And I love what you said actually about the difference in like, you know, the way somebody's composition will sound early in their career versus late. Are you guys familiar with the podcast Song Exploder?
Yes.
Okay, Song Exploder is amazing. Anybody on stream, if you're curious about the ins and outs of making music, like Song Exploders, Hirschkesh Herway, I believe, is the guy who does it.
I can never pronounce his name, and I will never.
Okay, thank you.
I will never. Like, I just can't try. I'm sorry. It's a great.
You're watching the stream, so Hirschkesh Herway. Sorry.
It's a great podcast.
Yeah, it's amazing. But one of the earlier ones he did was with the album Leaf. And, you know, it was one of the earlier tracks, and Album Leaf is off one of my favorite albums by the band. And, like, he mentions, like, this is stuff that I used to do, and I used to allow myself to be more sloppy, and I used to use Vegas, so I used to do all these weird tricks, like, with stuff that I can't reproduce in Pro Tools now. And, like, that's, honestly, that is what I'm looking for when I'm ordering music. I want it to sound a little, I think you mentioned earlier, vulnerable, almost. I love that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. Like, if you are just starting out, and maybe you're watching the stream because you're interested in becoming a video game composer or like learning how to write music, you don't have to save your money for the new iMac Pro and a Pro Tools license. And like, you know, the Pro gear will come, but incredible music is made with even the most rudimentary of tools. Like, I used to, you know, in my early days when I thought spending money meant quality, I used to be like, oh, Fruity Loops, who uses that? And it's like, the people who use that, actually, there are lots of great producers who use it to make incredible music, and that costs almost nothing. So if you want to cut your teeth, like, go download it today, get the demo, and put some notes in and see what comes out the other end. It might be garbage, but you might actually be surprised at how professional your stuff can sound, like, on day one.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I do want to point out right now that actually the art on screen is by our friend Julian, who's doing work for an upcoming visual novel, Date or Die. While their art was up on screen, I really wanted to plug them, because, like, I love their work, and there's more of it coming, so I wanted everybody to know that, like,
so
first and foremost.
The character art or the background art or both?
Definitely the character art. I'm actually not certain about the background art. I'm like trying to desperately look up credits right now. Apparently, yes. But their portraiture is like very distinct.
Yeah.
VN scene art. Yeah. So yes, the backgrounds as well.
Awesome.
Like I love their work, and it shines in this game as well.
Yeah, it definitely also feels very, very human. Like, not everybody in your games has to look like, you know, waifish anime, perfect, flawless girls, folks. Like,
Hey, you back up about Ghost of Miami.
well, hey, that was kind of segueing into the game you're actually, you know, kind of getting off the ground now a little bit. Like, there is room for people who look like real people in visual novels, right? Just because the tradition of visual novels is like a lot of anime and stuff from, you know, they're very Japanese in origin. Like, we don't have to copy that style all the time. So if you're like, well, I want to make a visual novel because I like telling stories, but I'm not really into the anime thing, like, do you, like, make your own thing. There's a lot of room for that. And, you know, one of the ways in which you can have a different voice in a visual novel is to have a different art style, come at it from a different perspective, and use different kinds of characters.
That was a bomb, I see, okay.
All right, so what's going on screen right
So
now?
right now we're infiltrating a guy and trying to find some intel. We need to get through this door. And I'm not sure how to do that just yet, but maybe in the meantime, could you tell us a little bit about this background track, James? And
Yeah, James, if you kind of remember who did which tracks, I would really appreciate it. A lot of this stuff is new to me personally.
yeah, you mentioned that a lot of great raw talent we found on Reddit, plus the 2D artist is really up and coming in the dev scene. I think that is just fantastic that, just look for people who ask and give it a shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Reddit is great if you are looking for people to collaborate with. There are so many eager people who just want to make something and put their skills to use. Like making a game is a very complex thing because there are a lot of different disciplines that are required, right? And it is almost certainly going to be a collaborative effort.
If you open the menu, the music should be there.
This one?
Oh well, I wasn't sure.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
did you blow yourself up? Okay, good.
No. Oh, songs are listed when you start level from the menu. That is really cool.
That's
Okay.
cool. All right.
I'm opening it up. Oh, not pausing. Sorry.
But yeah, I know that James had the opportunity to work with artists that I've been listening to for years. I mentioned Mitch Murder, and I'll continue to gush about Mitch Murder until my lungs are dry and empty. But they also get to work with El Tigre. They got to work with Power Glove, who I've been listening to for a long time. They did the soundtrack to Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon.
Yeah, more 80s revival.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Like a lot of that neon saturated, very cool look. Oh, this is Nightcrawler. Okay, yeah. So this track is by Nightcrawler. And I've been listening to this stuff for years. I was introduced to this whole scene initially through a band called Future Cop.
Yes.
And I've kind of been in love with it since. Even before that, I was listening to bands like Danger and Anorak, a French act that I absolutely love. Yeah, this is my jam, honestly.
I laughed because I mentioned earlier in the stream that we have a Spotify playlist that's collaborative for Ghost of Miami type music, and I put the 4-hour track from Danger on the playlist, and I was like, if you guys have anything you want to listen to, or you think I should listen to, put it in there. And then Conrad, without looking to see if it was on there, went and immediately was Danger 4-hour. He put the exact same track on there. And it's all right, we're in lockstep on this.
Yeah.
This is a vibe.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a vibe that we agree is part of this. Future Cop is also a good call out. That's a lot of very fun poppy 80s music. That still has that synthwave vibe to it, but isn't necessarily as dark and rhythmic as a lot of the tunes that I write and that we've mentioned before and that we're hearing now. So yeah, if you want some fun vocal tracks, definitely go check out Future Cop. They're on Spotify as well.
Yeah, and that was something I really wanted to capture too, was obviously not every song in Ghosts of Miami could be big and happy, but the ones that were there, I had a very clear picture for this is the mood that I'm trying to evoke with this. I know the song we're working on right now actually has a big Future Cop, that was my whole reference point for it. I was just do Star Worshipper, but better and different. So yeah, I'm really happy with how that's coming out, so. That's my brief crappy history of synthwave.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're hearing that's kind of characteristic of the style of music is that, straight 8 or straight 16 sequence bassline patterns. So you're gonna so again, it's we're creating movement through the rhythm in the music, but not necessarily movement through harmonic or melodic elements in the music. It's gonna stay. So we're on A, and so we can create that kind of tension through the rhythm without necessarily actually walking up and down the scale and changing chords, which might be distracting. Again, if we get sort of the texture and the sonic soundscape that we want, that you have died. I'm so sorry, Tracy. I was knocked out of my train of thought. That was stunning.
So yeah, I did want to ask. I sometimes don't really know how to refer to the individual components of these songs that I know I love, right? So so there's like the backbeat. What do you call those, like when like a big synth chord comes in? Like, is there a word to like describe what that is compositionally?
Sure. So it's usually called in electronic production a stab.
Stab.
So yeah, the idea is we're trying to draw the analogy between being stabbed with the weapon, like it's very sudden, and then like kind of rings out and there's space around it, as compared with like a chord that's in the background, which is a pad. That's typically used to describe the sound, and that's used to like pad out the space behind all the other instruments. It's not in front, but then rhythmically, like if you're on the downbeat or something, you hear that like it's tailing off, call it a stab.
Interesting. Okay, cool. And thank you for clarifying for me what a pad is too.
There you go.
And you've probably been able to tell when I've been like compiling some of these notes. I'll just be like, whatever's happening here at this timestamp, I want more of that, right? And
Yes.
I imagine it can sometimes be frustrating when I don't even have like the basic vocabulary.
Well, I can speak to that too, and this is a thing that you're going to run into as a composer a lot if you want to work, is that you have to learn how to communicate with people who have an idea of what they want, but don't really have the ability to tell you what it is that they want, because they didn't take like 4 years of music theory in college. Like, that is acceptable. A video game producer should not be expected to know these kinds of terms, right? But you need to be able to meet them in the middle. And so that's where like being your own librarian helps, and sort of having a lot of music that you can reference and say, do you mean like this or like this, A or B? That's something that, a producer or basically anybody can say, yes, more A, more like this or more like that, better or worse. So you need to be able to guide the conversation by using real concrete examples in that sense. And I can't necessarily say like, I felt like using the Locrian mode here because it was really dark and I wanted to modulate to the subdominant in this phrase, and then I'm going to do like a non-diatonic sequence. And these are all things that I would tell my music theory professor, but I'm not going to tell Conrad, because he's like, I don't care what you did, it sounds like garbage, or this is really hot. Like, that's going to be the reaction. And you need to be able to meet people on that level. But at the same time, you have to, and we've done this a couple times too, you need to be able to take direction from the producer and the people that you're working with. Like, sometimes they're going to ask you to make changes that you don't want to make. And you need to understand like when to say, okay, cool, for the sake of the project, I'm going to do what you want. And when to push back and say, actually, I think that's not a great idea, and here's why. And be able to defend your creative decision. Like, you don't have to be a hard ass about it, but at least stand beside the creative decisions that you make and believe in them, while allowing opportunities for people to give you constructive feedback and hopefully reach a better result. Like, know what battles you're gonna fight, basically.
And yeah, people on the other side giving review, like, this is something that took me a while, and it's a little embarrassing to admit that, was you have to remember that you're working with professionals and experts in their field. So like, if you go to bat for something, you need to be like, ding dang sure it is either critical to your vision or like you know exactly what you're talking about. Because like I've found myself some like positions before where like I'll make a pitch for something, somebody like, and this was much earlier in my career, somebody would be like, well, I don't know, maybe we could do it like this, and I was like, I was like 24, and I'm like, excuse me, it says lead designer on my desk,
Right.
And that's a bummer thing to do. You got to listen to the experts that you're working with, because that's what you're hiring out, that's the people you're working with.
Yes, and if you are a composer fortunate enough to be hired to work on something, then you are the musical expert, which doesn't mean that your opinions are invincible, right? Like, hopefully your taste is very, very good, but also, the game is partly your vision, and you're contributing to that vision. But like ultimately, the producer has the grand vision, and that's what you want to satisfy. You don't necessarily want to have like a too many cooks situation where everybody went off and did their own thing, and then you have like these incongruent parts at the end of it, which is a real challenge. Like when you're working creatively together. So that's the importance of finding a good team too. And I guess that's just true of any work. You guys probably know that. Like, if your team is good, your job is going to be good, probably.
I would agree with that.
Ah, man, I really do like this character art. That one, especially.
Sorry.
Like,
An open eye face palm. And then she keeps their police force skirt on. Plot thickens.
Do you want to cut over to Hotline in like 10 minutes or so?
Yeah. So we'll, I think we're coming up on the end of this mission. So once we get there, we'll switch over to Hotline Miami and talk a little bit more about a very different kind of crime story that takes place in the 80s.
Yeah.
Hayes destroyed this.
So one cool thing that I've noticed about this game is the name, right? My Vermouth, which is sort of like a blend of well, so vermouth, we're talking about mixed drinks here, but then like also some Japanese sensibility, and that's like pretty common with cyberpunk in general. It's like elements from the Far East, whether they're Japanese or Chinese names, and combined with other kinds of elements. And there's like a cool, for my own project, cyberpunk name generator that you can Google and have some fun with. Like you can make fake cyberpunk company names or space colony names for your D&D campaign or whatever. Like,
on the topic of things that I'm embarrassed to admit, we recently saw Ghost in the Shell in theaters, and it wasn't until this most recent rewatch, Joe leaned over to me and was like, "This takes place in Hong Kong, right?" And I was like, "Of course it does." You know, like I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, I've been watching this movie since I was in like high school, right? And I'm just like, oh, cool. Great, like twice that later, I finally come to this very simple realization. Thank you, Joe.
well, the number of times I think we've all done that with something
Yeah.
or other.
That movie's got a brilliant soundscape too.
Yeah, it
like
does.
yeah.
The new or
The
older?
Mamoru Oshii's 96, I think, but yeah, that one in particular. Like I've always loved the soundtrack to that movie. Oh.
Mine has purple hair. Major has purple hair.
Okay, yeah, James is pointing out that my line of thinking here might not be coincidental. It's a good look. Yeah, that was one thing that I did too when we started Ghosts of Miami. Actually, I went back and I watched a bunch of 80s sci-fi movies. I haven't watched some late 70s stuff. I ended up watching both 2001 and Sean Connery's Outworld, which was like
wow.
this
Man,
like
there's a
yeah,
throwback.
Okay.
yeah, right, like this campy sci-fi sheriff in space, like because I wanted to get a feel for like what the soundscapes in those movies sounded like in the structure of those stories, and I ended up throwing a lot of that out for our work, which was fine, of course. Like, but it was still really interesting to go back and listen to a lot of the compositional elements in those you were talking about.
So what were you looking for in those kinds of watching those movies as far as the soundscape for? What kind of inspiration were hoping to find? I guess?
Okay, so I mentioned that like I've been really into synthwave for a long time, and when when Joe first approached me to make an 80s murder mystery, that is where my head was immediately. It was like, oh wow, you've come to the right place. I was very excited and very very on about like Vangelis soundscapes, big synthy compositions, and the more I started listening to it and the more I started to evaluate all what I was doing there, I was also watching movies like Back to the Future, actually, which like one of the first things you hear is Huey Lewis and the News. And like I started looking at this, and I started the big strip malls and like the suburban scene of California in Back to the Future, and I started thinking to myself, actually I want it to be more of a real place. And so I took a look at all this synthwave stuff that I had kind of dug around in, and I ended up saying like that's actually not the feeling I want for this game. So we ended up rooting it more in real Miami and paying more homage to what makes Miami like Miami. I did definitely watch Top Gun again while Joe was asleep.
So that I hear that movie might be getting a sequel.
I did hear
with
that.
like Tom Cruise
Again?
and Val Kilmer coming back.
Tom Cruise did great in The Mummy, I hear, so I can't wait to see new Top Gun.
Ugh. And on that note, I think we finished our
Okay.
defragmented.
I'm gonna
section.
try.
Thanks so much, James, for
Yeah, James,
checking in.
thank
It
you.
was fantastic to have you. And I was saying that in the very beginning, we do start our first mission in a dingy ramen shop. So James says that is probably the most referencey reference, but we tried to keep those looks to a minimum. So then we do have
Fair.
the thing called the bitter pills, a big pill check. I saw that as well, and I was tickled.
You played beautiful homage to your history, James. That's what you
Love
did.
it.
And
Yeah,
we
of
love
course.
it.
All right, so let me do some housekeeping while we get Hotline Miami set up. And I'm actually going to go to dashboard, update the game as well.
Yeah. I'm gonna try
behind
my
the
best
scenes
here.
action.
Yeah, update. And that down here. And we're gonna hand the controller off to Conrad, because you know who's rubbish at most video games? That's right, me.
Well, okay, so when I was practicing Hotline again, which is great because it makes me sound like some kind of speedrunner. Like, when I was practicing Hotline again, it, oh no, I'm hearing myself.
Oh no, we're
Pause a second. Let's make sure that is muted, because I know it's not.
Sorry, stream. We're traveling through time and hearing ourselves. One second.
There we go.
Right. All right.
Okay, cool.
Now we won't have that weird feedback. All right, so let me put this down.
But yeah, I played the first few missions of this game like 800 times because A, that's how the game is played, but B, I'm not very good. So this song is actually by El Huervo, who has a couple songs on this album that I really enjoy because I find his composition to be sparse and impactful. I love that stuff. And so...
Yeah, that is a good note because especially with a lot of synthwave, like the tendency or the impulse, I guess, is to fill the space with like more and more. Like you want to have two bass lines, like this pad and then this ostinato behind it, and just like synths everywhere. Everything is swirling and moving. But sometimes what you really need is to create that dynamic range by having space, and that way the hits sound bigger. Because otherwise, if you keep making everything bigger and bigger and bigger, eventually you're going to run out of room and you have nowhere to go, and you'll exhaust your listener.
Right.
So be sure to like leave space in the track so that your hits actually do some impact.
Yeah, I want to say probably the key characteristic of Hotline Miami is that it feels very heavy and it's droning. Like you can hear in this introductory track, it's the
Yeah, it's very thick.
Yeah,
Like there's a lot of weight to the sound, and wow, that door is just
Sorry.
waving to you.
Yeah, I have like notes up. So I believe this song was done by Moon. It's an act I actually really love, but don't know a ton about. I apologize.
Yeah, that's fair.
So Joe mentioned before that Defragmented uses licensed music and has a couple of original tracks. Hotline Miami is actually all licensed music with, I think, maybe one or two that were composed specifically for the game. But you can actually see in the credits the acts and groups that created the tracks that you hear throughout this game, which, sorry, I forgot to warn you ahead of time, this is a very violent game.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Stream, like we're maybe rated T for teen, like violence warning. It's this game is bloody and gross.
This is probably the grossest game we've ever had in the stream. It's just a heads up in case that's not your kind of thing. So, but yeah, the gist of it is you are a hitman for hire. You don't know really what your deal is other than you get missions from an answering machine and from a couple of guys who sit around wearing these beautiful white suits giving you missions, and also animal masks that I believe you find out quite a bit later what their deal is. But for now, all that you know what you have to go on is you are just going into rooms and beating the crap out of people.
So musically, what we're hearing again is rhythmic elements. We've got like a pretty standard 4 on the floor drum machine beat. So like kicks on 1, 2, 3, and 4, snares on 2 and 4, 16th note hi-hats, and then I'm hearing pretty much we're staying in the same like harmonic space, which I believe is no. Well, anyway, hearing about 2 notes. Guess who doesn't have perfect pitch, folks? That would be me. It's also sort of hard for me to hear it exactly. But you're hearing things like da 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 da, and that's that ostinato style 16th note bass line that we were talking about before. It's more about the rhythm than the notes that you choose.
Yeah, it's not quite an ostinato, that it's not like its own standalone melody.
Yes.
Like this piece is actually a really good example of an 80s style ostinato.
Yeah, we get that arpeggiated.
And James mentioned it in chat, but this is Jasper Bryan, and this composition might be my favorite in the game. I love this song.
Yeah, it's very simple, but the choice of sound is perfect. You get a really like nice, thick, heavy like bass line and kick. Again, not flooding the mix out, but then this airy, bright, beautiful vibe on top of it, and then the very slow like synth melody that's coming in now to kind of hi falsetto. There's that. Yeah. So it's again very very simple, but like you don't have to go to the moon on every melody. Sometimes like it's much more impactful to be simple and have something that speaks directly and isn't like overly complicated or full of itself, right? So there's a lot of that in the soundtrack, and I think it's one of the reasons it's so successful.
I was gonna let it roll for a bit. I was trying to remember if the vocal track kicks in sooner rather than later, but there's a distorted vocal treatment in this song that I've always really enjoyed, and it might take a little bit though, and obviously this is a stream where a game is being played, so. Well, I also really love this menu screen. I had early comps for Ghosts of Miami. Oh yeah, here we go. I love that.
Neat.
That texture that's applied to that. I had early comps for Ghosts of Miami's loading screens actually that did that like driving sort of like palm trees in the background look, and I ended up tossing that. We ended up doing something even better, in my opinion, which I can't wait for everybody to see. But this screen right here actually was
so
like,
excellent.
I basically stole it wholesale at first, and then I was like, Conrad, you can't do that. That's not how games are made.
Yeah, but it is exactly. It's like exactly right, like the neon plus the silhouettes and like the parallaxing.
Sorry, yeah, I've played this game a couple times, so like when I get to the text, it's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna blow through this, no problem.
That's
Yeah, as Tracky mentioned, this is like the plot of this game, like it's very like loose insofar as most of the direction you're given throughout it is just like here's a place you have to go to, and as you play the game, you are exposed to kind of more of the actual plot points. There's a perspective change to another character that I've always really appreciated. And then if you dig through the levels and find all the little tiles, you can get the super secret endings with the creators of the game.
So this is a track we all love. I think this is a Scattle.
Yeah, this is Scattle for sure.
Is there any chance we'll get to play a level with Flatline?
It doesn't seem likely, unfortunately. That one happens much later.
We have maybe the game of your life. We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, so Joe called us out in the chat for not mentioning the movie Drive, which we mentioned before the stream started. But
That's true.
This game feels a lot like the film Drive, which also has a pretty strong 80s aesthetic. No scorpion jacket that I can see. Top-down perspective makes it hard, but.
So this character's name is Jacket. There's Jacket and Helmet. Helmet is the other PC you end up getting to play as. And I've compared this game a lot, of course, to Drive. For people that haven't seen it, it's scored by College, another synthwave act that I've always really loved.
So incidentally, I want to mention that the bass line on this track is currently doing something that is, I maybe subconsciously or otherwise, copied directly for the Ghost's main theme, which goes, and so what that is in a minor key moving down to the submedian or the 6th scale degree. So we're hearing that in the bass line where it's like, so you get that half step up to the submedian, which has a really satisfying sound. You're gonna hear that a lot in synthwave. That's in a minor key. There's a lot of that, and a lot of like walking down and back up from the submedian. Stuff like that. You're gonna hear that all the time. So yeah, use that.
It doesn't quite resolve. So was that something that you found was useful when you were designing the way the tracks loop in the game?
Yes.
And using that specific.
Yes. Well, yeah. Not only is it the fact that it like is lifted directly from all kinds of like 80s synthwave and dance music, which I write a lot of also, but yeah, you really want to avoid resolution when you're going to loop, and especially in a visual novel where people are reading, and so there's like emotional impact, but everybody reads at a different pace. And Joe was alluding to this earlier. Like, we don't have an expectation of how long it's going to take you to get through a scene in Ghosts. So the music has to keep going without feeling like the music arrived before the narrative did. And that is like probably the major way in which video game music is distinct from writing for film. Like, I just wrapped up a film project, and the nice thing about writing for film is that you have timestamps for every single emotion that's going to happen, and it's very specific, and you know exactly what you have to hit. With a video game, you have to maintain a little bit of ambiguity and flexibility, not only so that the tracks can keep going, but so that tracks can be used across multiple scenes at the discretion of like the producer, right? Who may wish that they could afford another track, but maybe they can't, or there isn't time, or some other practical reason for like needing to reuse a theme in the game.
Yeah, but here, like a lot of other shooters, there's a sense of propelled momentum, and you hear that in the time signature. It's not very dynamic, I want to say. It's pulse is
Yeah.
going forward, which is pretty stark contrast to when you're in your apartment answering the phone, which is, like we said before, is a very heavy sense of feeling, is a kind of...
Yeah.
That was awesome.
That was, yeah. So when we were practicing this before, like, nailed it, dude. Yeah, and that's why a lot of the synthwave music has a lot in common with like house and techno music, which is going to be, 4/4 time signature, roughly in the range. Synthwave is usually a little slower, but around 130 BPM. So why 130 BPM? Seems random. Actually, like when you have an elevated heart rate as a human, like you're going to be in that 120 to 130 range. And so the pulse, the kick, is going to it's going to reflect the idea of a human heartbeat. And if you're on the dance floor, eventually your heart can actually get into lock with that kick drum, which propels you forward. And that is why dance music centers around that tempo, typically. So now we have different dance styles and things go faster or slower, but like the original draw of house music was that, and that's why it's like right in that range. And so you're going to hear that a lot with like any kind of propulsive sort of synthwave track. Whoa! Whoa!
Oh, it's beautiful.
Who dat Earl?
It's beautiful.
VHS.
And so
I
Holland,
love it.
Holland Miami draws less from new wave and a bit more toward, like you were saying, like house and dance, which is kind of where what we know is that genre was starting to be codified.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's interesting. It's less of a meandering kind of story and much more of a like just go and do what you're told, like don't think about it kind of thing.
But when we're in VHS Palace, right, we get kind of a laid back, like trip hop beat almost.
Yeah, sure.
Some syncopated rhythms. But now that we're in action, I expect to hear a more straightforward, straight ahead 4/4 drum pattern to propel us through.
Yeah, and that
Well,
track.
once we're off the phone.
That track in the outro sequence is another El Cuervo song. It's Daisuke, which is probably my favorite on the album, if I'm being honest. And I hadn't heard about his act before I started playing this game. I mentioned earlier that like the composition is a little sparser and a little slower, and like listen, like if you cry every time, guys.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Guns attract attention.
Tip.
Good.
Hot tip. I should put on the walrus mask.
Okay, what do we got? What does Walrus do?
Oh, I'm intrigued by some of these silhouettes, though.
Survive two bullets. All right, let's give it a shot.
The horse is said lethal doors, so that would actually be pretty good too. So you don't have to
Oh,
do that
man.
extra.
Yeah.
This
head
is
smash.
this is a ranged fight too. So this is actually two. Oh shoot! Not again.
I'll go back.
Yeah. So I normally play this game with the mask that gives you one-hit kill punches.
Nice.
But
We'll see if we.
yeah, we'll see. We'll see how this goes.
All right, so what we're hearing right now, like this kick pattern, like this is a progressive house, progressive trance kick. Bump, ba bump, 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 ba bump, bump, bump. So you get your kicks on 4, but then there are these slightly polyrhythmic other kick sounds. So it's not all the same sound, but you're hearing. I don't have a drum machine. Sorry, that's the best way to illustrate it. But yeah, if you program that in, you're going to get a really good start for like a propulsive sort of house record if you pick your sounds correctly. And now we're hearing the with a little bit of swing on it, right? So it's not straight ahead. There's a little bit of
And so by a little bit of a swing, meaning that it held on to the last note before going to the next one. So it wasn't in the straight time signature, which is quarter note, quarter note, quarter note bump, but it was.
Yep. So when you're producing electronic music, especially, and you're in your sequencer software, it's very easy to make things lock to a grid, but you maybe you'll definitely lose a human feeling, which maybe is what you want, but you might also lose a sense of funk or a sense of groove. And like sometimes pulling those things off the grid intentionally when they're not on strong beats will get you a little bit of that shuffle or swing that can make a track feel funkier or more propulsive. So like, harmonically, again, there's really nothing going on here, but it's about rhythm and sound, and you get a great effect out of 2 notes.
Sure.
Where we have
Yeah,
a C minor interval. That's it.
Do 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 do. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. That's all that's happening, really, and then it's just using a lot of different tricks of the trade, so to speak, to make it sound exciting and interesting.
Yep. I mean, you've got a great strong drum foundation, some I like there that we're like opening the filter and sort of making the release time longer, so the notes get a little bit longer, then they get clippier again. That's a way to build tension without actually changing notes. Lots of ways to build tension in electronic music without doing so harmonically, because you can mangle the sounds in so many interesting ways. We're hearing that here too.
I feel like we're hearing with it's getting a little sharper, a little louder. It's not like it's building to a drop, it's say like dubstep or something like that, but it is just not quite, and then back to where it's going.
Yep, exactly. Oh, right here.
There it is.
Oh, sorry guys.
Okay. You got this.
Yeah.
And this is a tense moment for all of us.
I can't get over that tiger rug.
I know. I don't even know what to say about it. I wanted to say, like, that's a big tiger rug. And I'm like, no, tigers are pretty big. So I kept trying to measure, like, is that actually the correct size for a pixelated tiger rug? And I guess it is.
Like,
I don't know.
It looks like someone's house cat that they just sort of like flattened.
It is a very yellow tiger. I will say that much.
That's a really big cat.
Chat, if you know how many pixels a tiger is supposed to be, let us know.
Uh-oh.
Somebody get on the Wikipedia for this.
I pressed the throw button instead of the shoot button, guys.
Yeah, you got him.
I did.
Oh, that's right. We have to.
Oh, man. That guy in there has a gun. I know this.
Oh, yep.
Oh, nice.
All right.
Go to the car.
Hooray.
Gotta go downstairs.
I thought that said 1,400 seconds at first. I'm like, wait, that's not a lot of time.
Oh, this guy.
Oh, he's the worst.
Our big boy. He back.
Yeah.
With his armor.
All right. That was an easy one this time. Great.
What?
Oh, so
Once again,
brutal.
this is a violent game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mentioned Drive earlier, and like, Drive in the movie, all the violence, and did I say this already, that the violence is like very fast and punctuated?
No.
There's like long series of like lulls and narrative exposure in that movie, and then all the violence happens within like, I'd say like, boom, 10 seconds, boom, 15 seconds, and it's brutal and like horrible, and like I find a lot of the elements from that movie reused here. And I mentioned earlier that the soundtrack was done by College, another synthwave act that I've been following for a long time and absolutely love. And I'm sure you've heard, like everybody's heard the title track for that one.
Yes.
A Real Hero and a Real Human Being. A little on the nose for the movie, but I mean, God bless, because it was perfect. I mean, for the film.
Yeah, I think honestly, like, the earnestness of that soundtrack kind of speaks to what we were talking about earlier about vulnerability. Like, they really went out on a limb, and they did not try to be literary with a lot of the stuff. It was just as raw and heartfelt as they could make it, and I appreciate that. And sometimes it's a hard line to walk between like cheesy and earnest, but I think they pull it off. So if you figure out the secret to that, then write a book or something, because I could use it.
Oh, right. Sorry. I did it again with the text skipping.
Don't you? Well, no, I don't know who you are. You have a chicken for a head. How can I possibly know? You're not a nice person, are you? Well...
My actions here, too. That's fair. Actually, I've earned that one.
Starting to take warm here. Oh, it sounds like someone turned on a saw.
Yeah. So speaking to that, we've got like a really distorted, almost guitar-like texture happening, and creating some tension by like making the pitch drift just enough so that the interval that's created between the bass line and this grind is non-harmonic, and that's going to give you a lot of tension. Like if you have a non-diatonic interval, which you can create again electronically by taking a diatonic interval and then just pushing one of those notes up or down a little bit to create like, it doesn't sound quite right. Excellent source of tension. You really want that note to snap back into place and will not be satisfied until it does.
You hear a fair amount of that in Stranger Things as well.
Yes.
And again, that's just another different genre that using the same kind of 80s grab bag of tricks, more or less, to make a horror scene. And it's really brilliant how the same kind of like, you still hear that rhythmic punch, like especially in the main theme, but then you hear, like you were talking about before,
yes.
And it keeps you off balance.
My favorite thing about the Stranger Things score has got to be the fact that it sounds like they were using like 4 real analog synthesizers. And so, okay, why does everybody love analog so much? Like the difference is that the digital the digital waveforms in synthesis are super clean, right? Like, it's all math, so the waveforms that come out are precise and uniform, and those sound really clean. But with analog synthesizers, they have a little bit of drift. There's a little bit of error. So if you have a waveform, like, it might be a little rounded, or it might have an extra peak here or there, and that gives you this warmer, imperfect character. And with music, you know, sometimes we want imperfect. But the other thing that old analog synths used to do is, like, they would go bad, and the oscillators would start to drift. And that's why you get this sort of like sour, you know, drowning cat sounds. But when you layer all that stuff together, you get these rich harmonies that create tension very slowly, and then, like, it kind of snap back into place. But it's very slow and goes over time, so it has this built-in tension and warmth that is a lot harder to get. And that's why so many synthesizers now try to emulate analog synthesizers by sampling those waveforms or putting them in. And new analog synths are being made all the time.
Yeah.
But
Whoa!
oh my gosh, yeah,
Yeah.
there goes
You'll
my
never take me alive.
my
tried,
train of thought
guys.
just went away because that was visceral. I mentioned this earlier before we started, but, like, my favorite thing about this game is the real quick respawn time.
Yes.
Like, you don't have time to get frustrated. Like, you were already in the zone, you get right back in there and try it again. And I wish more games did that. I think a lot are starting to come around that.
There are just, like, taking the casual approach, so to speak. Like, it's not casual in that it's, like, not without substance or depth, but it is respectful of your time. So,
Yes.
like, maybe I just want to play, you know, a game that is a ridiculous shoot 'em up for a couple minutes as opposed to, you know, hours and hours. So
Yeah. Like, guys, I don't need the 5-minute game over screen and the long death animation. And definitely, if there's a game over screen where I died, don't show me the credits. Like, now I'm just mad at you. Don't do
you
that.
hear that, Arkham Knight? Arkham Asylum.
I'm not going to mention any names, but I've seen it. Do not do that. Do not do that. It's like putting out there, here's the list of people who are better than you because our game beat you. And it's like, no.
Uh-oh. I think there's a mask that lets you spawn with a gun.
Oh, shout out
Shit,
to
it's-
Minzim in the chat. I think I just figured out who you are. What is up? Nobody else is going to pop in the chat and say, who dat walrus Manx? I think I know who that is.
Guys, thought I had that one.
What a speedy Doberman. Man.
Yeah, so the way I approach playing this game, this is not super musically relevant now, but the way I approach playing this game is I kind of try to develop a script for the level.
Have you played Frozen Synapse?
I have played of it. I've
I
not,
like how you put that, yes.
TM Travis McElroy, don't steal.
Because it's a lot like this if you took this and made it turn-based, right? Like, you have to, it's top-down, you have to strategize and sort of make a script for how the level's going to go. You program it all in, and then you watch how it plays out
Okay.
instead of doing it in real time. So your comment about treating this game as something that you, like, plan out in advance made me think of that. That game also has a legit excellent soundtrack.
Nice.
Right, this level. Ugh.
What the? Oh, wow, they've got bunkers.
Yeah, they're like...
Oh my gosh.
We were also saying earlier how this game, because of its top-down nature and sort of like 80s aesthetic, feels very much like a game that you played at a Pizza Hut while waiting for your table to be ready. And he was hooked up to some stuff.
Yeah, I don't remember how to do that part, actually.
Well, we've eliminated one way,
Yeah.
one idea on how to do it.
Thanks, everybody, for bearing with me.
Oh no, that's fine. You are far ahead than I would have gotten myself. Can I just
Yeah.
say? Oh,
More-
have we lost our hearing? We've lost our background track.
Oh, yeah. So I'm not sure if that was a direction or a bug, but I have...
Oh, okay.
I've definitely had that happen before in
Oh,
this
weird.
scene,
Gotcha. Okay.
where...
I'm gonna.
So that's like diegetic and non-diegetic sound again. Like, all of a sudden, the non-diegetic music, which means things characters in the game aren't hearing, becomes diegetic because it's gone. We had a giant explosion, now our hearing's ruptured.
My tinnitus.
Yeah.
Man, I could have sworn that you were supposed to shoot them.
Double tinnitus.
I could have sworn you were supposed to
Wowza.
what? Well,
I guess. Can you have to go up to a disarm it maybe with that?
nah, you shoot it with a shotgun. I just gotta use the right
Oh.
weapon.
Okay.
I goofed up, Tracky.
That's all right. Maybe they shoot it for you and you dive out the window in a cool fireball.
All right. Yeah,
Gotcha.
That's one way to do it.
Oh no!
Oh, I didn't think he was gonna get back up. Okay, that was a surprise.
All right, so we're before we wrap today, I think we could tell us a little bit, Casey, about what inspires you about game music, and maybe not just composing for, but just the genre in general. Just what
Yeah, totes.
Go for it.
Absolutely. So like I grew up, playing video games like everybody in this room and probably everybody in the chat, and so it was really like my first exposure to music that like wasn't on the radio. So I loved Sonic the Hedgehog, all that music and FM synthesis. That really got me into electronic, more poppy, especially J-pop sounds later. Like when I found J-pop music and was like, oh, this is really resonating with me. But also, I started playing violin in elementary school specifically because of games like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy IV. So Uematsu, like his orchestrated scores, this was a way for me to go to the symphony in my living room. Like my uncultured parents like weren't exactly going to do that. Like God love them, but it's expensive to go to the Kennedy Center or whatever. So I started to learn to love these like big orchestral arrangements. And then Chrono Trigger is a very different kind of soundtrack in that it has these like non-diatonic harmonies, lots of jazz fusion stuff going on.
Sure, yeah.
And then it was like, oh wow, this is rich harmony. Like what's going on? I feel pulled in lots of directions, and that's really cool too. And ever since it was like, I want to be able to do that. So first that manifested in like playing music, and then as soon as I had a computer that could run music software, I started trying to write. Another thing that's like really inspiring, like especially if you look back before the Super Nintendo, like at the NES, you only had 4 voices, and what people were able to do with those 4 voices to make music that sticks with us forever is incredible. So like if you look at the moon theme from DuckTales, right? Like immediately everybody knows what I'm talking about probably. It's short, it's got a really great melody, and it has to handle those notes extremely carefully because you're going to listen to that theme for like 20 minutes, unless you're a speedrunner, and you only have, it's only 50 seconds worth of music that's just going to keep looping. And yet, like at MagFest this past year, they played it live, and like the room lit up. I mean, we've probably heard that 50 seconds of music for hours on end at this point, but we still want to hear it.
Yeah.
And I think that really speaks to the power of video game music in particular, especially because you get to tie a narrative to it, and it then has some additional emotional meaning to you.
Yeah, that's something that Kondo has gone on record saying, that a game theme, especially an opening title theme, should be memorable first and foremost. It should be fun, and it's because it's the thing you're going to hear the most. So just taking into account, they were well aware that it's only 50 seconds, so we have to make it as interesting to listen to as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know of any other approach to composition, another genre, where you would take that. Like my audience is going to be listening to this constantly on repeat, so I need to step up my game.
It's a lot of responsibility, and it's terrifying sometimes. And when you are writing music for video games, like part of writing music is listening to it a bunch, and so you have that player experience while you're doing it. But you can't fudge it at any point, right? Like you can't say, well, this is the boring part, and then we're going to get to, no, you can't. You have to cut that out and put something else in there. The other thing that's really inspiring about video game music today, specifically, is like how video game music, and this is going to sound like I'm shilling to WMGSO, and I kind of am, but
Please do.
yeah, like the fact of the matter is that the community around video game music is awesome now, and like it's not about people who are off somewhere writing music and then people who are consuming it, because now you have video game cover bands, like we've had OC Remix for a long time, like people who are out there building on the work of others, and like indie game opportunities are cropping up more and more, and like thanks to the internet, thanks to YouTube and all this stuff, like you can go learn to make games and make them if you want to do that. Like if that's the thing you want to do, and you can find the time, like you can make it happen. And as a result, like all these people are coming together with really cool ideas, and it's not so much it doesn't feel just like a consumer industry, right? Like Hollywood movies, for example, like we go to the theater and we consume the stuff that people with a lot of money and resources produce. It's like, no, actually, there's this spectrum, and a lot of us are hanging out like in the middle of the spectrum, where we are making music, we're remixing it, we're arranging it, we're putting it out there, doing cover albums. Materia Collective is doing great work with their cover albums that are coming out that you can get on vinyl. Like, go get them. I am 8-bit. Recently put out like a vinyl release of the Last Guardian soundtrack. That's just like straight up gorgeous. It's like a friend of mine bought it, and he doesn't have a turntable, but he's probably going to frame it because it's beautiful. So yeah, like you can participate in the music now, and a lot of people are doing it and showing their enthusiasm, and that's really inspiring, especially for somebody who wants to make music and to hopefully sell it to you. It's very, very inspiring to see how many people like actually care about it and engage with it. It's not just background noise.
Absolutely. And I feel similarly as a vocalist. Like I say this from time to time, but when we talk about the variety of game music, that extends to performing as well. So when you're in like a video game orchestra, you may be doing jazz one piece, you might be doing, straight up baroque the next, you might be doing
like modern classical.
Yeah,
It's like way different from traditional classical, what we think of as like Haydn, Mozart, that sort of thing.
And yeah, like Joe was saying, at our concerts we get a lot of children as well. And I think at one show, the youngest person to come was 8 years old. The oldest was 80 years old.
Yeah.
So there was this incredible
Awesome.
just range of people who are interested in this style of music. And I think that speaks to a lot of it, that there's no, as much as there is no like restriction that if you want to make this music you can, now is a great time. It's just like you can enjoy this music no matter who you are or what you know, what your own personal preferences are, because there is something for you in a game that has existed that you will like.
Yeah, even from my childhood, like playing Final Fantasy VI in particular, Cyan's theme, like I remember my dad coming into the room and he was just standing there, and I thought like, oh, he's waiting for me to put down the controller to talk to him. And I was like, okay, what do you need? Like, what's up? And he's like, I was just listening to the music. Had no idea what was going on in the game.
That's so cool.
Thought that looked dumb, but he was pulled into the room. It's like, what? These sword people, I don't care about them. But he was pulled into the room from what he was doing, probably watching baseball in the other room, because he heard this orchestral music. So like, understand that music has the power to reach people, and you don't have to like, you're not just going to reach gamers, right? You might even turn people into gamers because they like your music so much. And it's just like one vector to get in there. Kind of like how with Ghosts of Miami, the narrative is another vector to get in there. I don't think my heart has stopped pounding for like the last 20 minutes.
I'm trying to play this by myself at night, and it's dark, and they're just like coming out of nowhere with that one sound. Music is the language we all speak. I agree very much.
Shout outs to chat. Music is the universal language.
Nope.
Mathematics may be the language of nature, but music is the universal language.
Woo!
They're piling up.
It seemed like a good idea when I had it, guys.
That's the optimal strategy, is just get them all to run to the door and then have this automatic. It should be go.
I cannot believe that there was a gun guy in here that I missed. Oh, missed him again. Oh. Womp womp.
Well, kind of know you are distracted, but do you have any parting thoughts about game music or composition, just from a developer perspective?
Trust your team, man. Like, you hired them for a reason. Pay attention to them when they give you feedback, and really take to heart what they're saying, because they're smart folks. They're good at what they do.
We certainly try. But yeah, like I said earlier, the counterpoint to that is, again, hopefully you're working with a team who's smart, who you respect. So be open to feedback. Like, it's really easy to fall into like a particular style of music and kind of like lock yourself in and get myopic about the kind of music you produce. You really want to broaden your horizons if you can, and try listening to stuff that you hate. Like that was me and reggaeton for Ghost of Miami. Like I had to dig, and I found a new appreciation for that style of music, and I know that made me a better composer. So.
Man, he's just sitting on John waiting for you.
Yeah, I'm just throwing it to the wind now, y'all.
I mean, I'm glad that they didn't like render them differently with their pants down. Like, at least it's the same sprite. I appreciate that. As graphic as this game is, there was a line that we did not cross.
That's true. Yeah, the closest we got was the weird like chick in the table who looked like a.
Sorry, guys.
It's okay. There.
So there's a plug in the chat, but also, if you're local to the Northern Virginia, DC Metro, Maryland area, take note that the Legend of Zelda Symphony of the Goddess concert is coming to Wolf Trap on July 22nd-ish, somewhere in the back half of July. Go get tickets. It's going to be great.
Which is coincidentally one of our concerts, but don't worry, we have another one on August 3rd. We'd be delighted to see you. It's our small ensemble showcase, so it is actually a collection of pieces performed by 3 or 4 musicians as opposed to the full 60-piece orchestra. So in these concerts, we get a chance to explore a bit more variety because, you know, some pieces are suited for maybe a singer and a pianist, but not necessarily for violin, strings, horns, the whole shebang. So we hope to see you there where we can really explore just the diversity of gay music and a wide range of styles in our small ensemble performances. I'll be there doing a piece from Transistor, and I hope that you will come out and see us do that.
Tracy's good. Come see her. Yeah, the small ensembles are great, especially because the music is more vulnerable. It is more intimate. You can hear the individual performers, and you really get to connect with them. I think a lot more when you can see just like 2, 3, 4 people really working together on a piece of music like that they chose, that they love, and that they polished as a small group. It really is a different experience, but go to both.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, and with that, let's see how far you get at the stage. Oh my
What's
God.
up?
Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to put the lid on this one and leave y'all hanging. So thank you all so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Conrad. Thank you all for
Thank you,
tuning in.
James. I see
Have a
you.
blast.
Thanks, James, for joining us in text form.
Yeah.
That.
So we're going to be off for Father's Day next weekend, but we'll be back on June 25th for our BioShock stream. Chris is going to come back to give us another music theory oral soundscape breakdown, and we hope that you join us then. And we are coming to the end of our season. We'll be taking a break after the 25th for the orchestra to get back on track, and then from there, we'll see where we end up. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Next broadcast, Babadook. Oh, Bioshock. Oh, Bioshock, not Babadook. Oh, man. Sorry.